So, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm delighted to give a speech here. And the topic of this speech will be the humanities, the relation between humanities and the scientific innovations. But this is a very philosophical issue, so I think it will be very difficult for me to talk in this issue, in English, because I think that even in my native language, Chinese, is already, difficult enough. But anyway, I tried to explain something to you. If you look back, that people always put the science and the humanities, it's strongly separated. Okay, even that for the people like professors in the university, maybe we know that these two kind of things are very closely related. But that when you are talking about science, usually we just forget these two things are very, very closely related. So, but this kind of issue has been pointed out, I think, in 1950s. There is a UK scientist, it's called Charles Percy Snow. He said that, he mentioned that there are two kind of cultures. One is called the humanities, another is called the scientific culture. And he said that, these two kind of cultures should be really closely related. But it's not widely accepted, start from 1950s. Because in 1950s, there is a big discussion was happening in UK. But now I think this kind of idea has been widely accepted. The acceptance of this kind of idea, it now means that, it has been put deeply into the mind of the scientists and so on. So actually, of course, we now agree that the science and the humanities are not really, separated. And of course, also, our science and technology not only, develop some of the materialized achievements and to improve the life of a human being, but at the same time, also we, develop some of the spiritual virtue and makes the human being, be modest, but also be ambitious at the same time, because human being will think that the whole nature is under control. That's the reason why, that we developed lots of technologies, but actually hurts the human being, ourselves, and hurts the environment and so on. And actually, the relation between the science and the humanities, it's quite closely related. And if we date back 2,500 years ago, there was a Chinese philosopher, it's called Zhuangzi. I think most of the Koreans, they know this famous Chinese philosopher. And he said that, heaven and earth proceed in the most admirable way, but they say nothing about them. The four seasons observe the clearest laws, but they do not discuss them. All things have their complete and distinctive constitutions, but they say nothing about them. The sages trace out the admirable operation of the heaven and earth, and reach to and understand the distinctive constitutions of all things. So it mentions that, the nature is not directly tell you anything, but only for the sages. They are possible to understand and to reach to the distinctive constitutions of all things. Now we have to mention that, what kind of person it can be called sages. Not only you have enough knowledge about the mathematics and physics, but at the same time, it should be a person is with enough moralities and so on. And besides that, maybe I have to mention maybe, let me to elaborate a bit for the fleshing out this philosophical observation. As a matter of fact, scientific knowledge is not necessary for surviving in the gathering and the hunting period, because at that time, of course, it's the primitive time of the human being. Otherwise, quite possible that chimpanzees would like to theorize how the evolution of primates is possible. But actually, it's not, of course. Even in human history, as we see, not every civilization was equally devoted to the elaboration of this kind of knowledge. This contrast implies that the devotion into science requires some precious moral virtue, which is not widely attributed. That is, according to Aristotle, that the curiosity emerging in some truth-oriented mind, or put it in differently, any time-consuming attempt to systematically reconstruct the truth about the empirical world will be immediately blocked by the lack of curiosity. And moreover, curiosity is simply not the only item in the minimal psychological inventory for making a scientific mind. Other items include, let's say, patience, which makes the long-term research sustainable, and also the sincerity, which makes cheating behaviors emotionally disgusted. And also the team spirit, which makes cooperation smooth and fruitful. And the courage, which makes warranted divergence from the orthodoxy psychologically fueled. Nevertheless, as I have mentioned above, the convergence of all these kind of virtues in individual person is rarely seen. So in the following, I try to mention that actually the human being, we have the dark side, and the dark side is not suitable for the scientific research. Let's say if every individual person, you can have all of this kind of good characters like patience, curiosity, and the sincerity, team spirit, and courage, and so on, then that we can see that maybe everywhere, not only Steve Chu, I think everywhere we can find lots of the famous physical scientists or some chemists and so on. But actually the human being, that human nature in which the following undesired psychological dispositions are entrenched, like indifferences, stubbornness, impatience, dishonest, egotism or jealousy, as well as the cowardice. How these dispositions could undermine the pursuit of the truth is not hard to see. Because if we have this kind of dark side, of course it will block for the exploration of the nature truths. But unfortunately, evolutionary psychologists have pessimistic observations of this dark side, even though these vices are really undesirable. Therefore, the responsibility of minimizing the impact of the dark side of the human nature should be left for the nurture rather than nature. As we all know that the social function for doing this kind of nurture is precisely what we routinely call the education. That means that, okay, no education will be no way to overcome this kind of dispositions. Then, okay, as the president of the university, I believe that this is the main purpose of the education, no matter it's natural science or the history or the humanities. Yeah. So in order to strengthen my point of view on the relation between the humanities and the sciences, let me give you an analog between science and the aesthetics. In the history of science, it is not difficult to find that when new hypotheses and the theoretical models were proposed by scientists, the scientific method they used involved not only the considerable imaginations or mathematics, intuitions, and inspirations, but also an intensive mental activity of pursuing, appreciating, and creating beauty. So sometimes I say that if let's say, you are studying quantum mechanics, if you do not understand the beauty of the quantum mechanics, it's not means that you really understand the quantum mechanics. And to some others, I believe it's the same. Actually, Einstein has mentioned that, okay, the purpose or the motivations of the scientific research are divided into three categories by Albert Einstein. Yeah. The first is for the satisfaction of the intelligence. Might be this is a kind of the human nature. The second is for utilitarian purpose. And this kind of purpose, I think, is strongly affected by the social structures and the social systems. And the third is harmonious pursuit of the beauty of the nature. I think this might be the most important motivation for finding out the natural truths. But unfortunately, of course, this kind of three purpose, that it's focused on one individual person. The only thing is, okay, what's the percentage of this three kind of purpose? Okay, we try to get rid of this called utilitarian purpose, but it seems that for the modern society, I believe that this kind of purpose will be enlarged quite a lot. People do science mainly, okay, for having a decent life or to having well-paid and to have their possibility to enjoy life. And if the purpose is for pursuit, the beauty of the nature, then, okay, you do not care anything about that. Okay, it's not a completely you don't care, but you care a little bit about something else, but mainly you try to find out the beauty of the nature. This is totally different for different kind of people. But talking about this, that might be I should mention that our Asian cultures. So in the Asian countries, how to get humanity substantially involved in the scientific education? So a general proposal is that the education policy makers in each country needed to make this involvement feasible for fine-tuning the local cultural mechanism. Taking China as an example, it has long been argued that all of the mainstream philosophical tradition in China are anti-scientific naturalism. So the Confucianists, focus too much on the political affairs and too little on the physical world. The Taoism dislike mechanically intricate artifacts and hence, cannot encourage the engineering. But if you look at the Buddhism, so the Buddhists even doubt the reality of the external world. However, there is always a more beautiful side of the same coin. That of course we should not say that all the Eastern traditional culture is wrong, but it has some kind of aspect is good. So for example, patience and the team spirit is exactly what we are required both in the Confucian and the scientific communities. Okay, this, that we match each other, while Taoism will provide the people a dynamic view of the world, namely a view may bring about more comprehensive evaluations of what did happen. Even counterintuitive narratives given by the Buddhism will help in enlarging the space of imagination for triggering some unexpected brainstorms. So in this sense, a systematic liberal education plan containing the rereading of these classic works is by no means a destruction of standard scientific training, but a substantial supplement to it, and the respectable development of science and the current Korea also gives another growth of how scientific spirit can be perfectly rooted in the Confucian society. You know, this is really, I admire Korea very much. So yesterday, I also mentioned that, okay, you know, we have lots to learn from Korea because, you know, you root from the Confucian society, but I think the science and technology developed so well, and especially only for, you know, not very large populations compared to China, because we have 1.3 billion of the populations. Yeah, but you have a relatively small population, but you know that the science and technology is developed so well, and it's rooted for Confucian society. So that means, okay, Confucian society, it should not be the block for the scientific innovation. So concurrently, the platform facilitates the international collaboration and exchange in researching issues concerning China's contemporary policies, economy, and the society. Yeah. So actually, you know, finally I want to, okay, this I think it's, finally I want to tell you something about, you know, what the Futen University is doing, and how we try to, you know, train the students to be more innovative, but it's rooted for the Confucian society. So first, you know, that Futen University is a comprehensive university. And this university, of course, we have the humanities and social sciences and medical science and the engineering, we have all. But if you, before, you know, 10 years before, you know, all the educations in Futen University is really separated for different majors. The funny thing is, you know, that then it's cost a lot of resources. For example, as the student of chemistry, you know, start from beginning, only the chemistry teachers were teaching you till your graduation. Then you know that the people trained, it's just like a certain kind of machine, you know. They can do chemistry, but know nothing about the other disciplines. Okay, maybe they can do something very well, but in a very narrow field. But if you talk to him, then suddenly you feel that it seems that the character, the personality is not complete. You know, it's just like a kind of machine. But the Futen University, we have almost all disciplines. So that's the reason why I start from year 2009. So we organize a lot of the, let's say, cross-multidisciplinary research centers. Here maybe I can mention is, there are two things I should mention. First is the so-called Futen Tyndall Research Center. Okay, not only the professors, scholars from the environmental department, but also the professors from the public policy or international relations and the historians, even the, you know, they can find the traces about the weather or the temperature date back 500 years ago. So then only in this way, this kind of complex problem for the global climate change that will be very important for gathering, let's say, the scholars from different disciplines. And another thing I want to mention is two centers. One center is what we call the Center for China Studies. One is located in UC San Diego, but it's open to all the UC systems. Another is also the Center for China Studies is located in Copenhagen University, but it faces to the whole Europe. This is because I believe that not only our tradition, our culture, but I think nowadays, of course, China is becoming more and more influential. Okay, then you know that's how to understand China. I think even for Koreans, you also have some of the difficulties. But I should say that even for Chinese people, you know, for me, it's not so easy for me to understand the whole China. So I have to talk to some of the, let's say, experts, yeah, social scientists. If they are scientists, I will talk about it to them. And this is very important. Then, okay, these two centers is, you know, open to the foreign scholars. Let's say any kind of issue happened in China, it will be a kind of world issue, but this kind of issue, it should be studied not by only by the Chinese researchers, but we have to hear the voice from different nations. So this is, we built an umbrella for the humanities and the social sciences. But at the same time, you know, that we can apply this kind of system for educating the undergraduate students. Okay, so this is what we call the liberal and art educations. But actually, if you date back to 1,000 years ago, if you at the Confucius time, actually all the education was liberal and art education. But now, because of the modern university system implemented into China, then, okay, our education has become very professional. As Aristotle said, as Whitehead, a UK scientist, said that, okay, if you date back to ancient Greece time, okay, the teachers were teaching the wisdom to the student. But now, we only teach the knowledge to the students. But knowledge is important, but the knowledge is not really very important because you can get marriage now and get knowledge now from the internet very easily. Now the problem happens is how to teach the wisdom to the students. So this is what we call the liberal art education, but in this kind of education in Fudan University, of course, we also attract the main advantages of the tradition of Chinese education. So the three main purposes is a comprehensive training of the language, culture, and scientific knowledge. Okay, language is important, and actually inside, the one thing is very important is we focus on certain ability for written and oral presentation. Because we found that, okay, Chinese students, usually they are very smart, but if you let them to give a speech or to write a paper, many of the scientists, they are not able of doing this very well. Then you know that it will be a very big obstacles for their future successful life, for their career. So this is also one very important thing. And also we try to tell them the main cultures all over the world. And then, okay, they will be very much open-minded, and they can talk, they have the ability to communicate with the people, they are having different background of culture. Because we hope that the students, they graduate from Fudan University, because we are nurturing the future leaderships, okay, their attitude to the world will be strongly affect the world. Of course, we want them to make a positive contribution for building up a much more harmonious future world. Because if we look at the present world, you know, full of lots of conflicts, I do hope that the students graduate from Fudan University, okay, they will be, you know, make a positive contribution to the world. So if you're in China, you can see that, okay, this kind of rostered officers, if they graduate from Fudan University, I think it's less. It's not. Some of the universities, they train the people, you know, that they have a lots of people is not really good. So I think it's not necessary for me to do any summary, but I hope that our ideas about the liberal arts education can, you know, really implement the spiritual things and to make the scientific innovation is better, and also can make a great contribution for build a harmonious future world. Thank you very much. Thank you.